The poison was already on the spoon. One bite, and the most powerful crime lord in New York, Vincenzo Barone, would be dead within seconds. His enemies sat across the room, smiling, clinking their glasses of champagne, waiting for the king to fall. Nobody saw the threat. His bodyguards were blind to it. The only person who knew the truth was a 6-year-old girl hiding under a tablecloth, clutching a coloring book. She had heard the secret words spoken in the shadows, but would a ruthless Mafia don listen to a child? Or was she about to become collateral damage in a war that had just begun? Stay tuned. This isn't just a story about crime. It's about the night innocence collided with evil. The kitchen of Il Palazzo was a symphony of chaos. Steam hissed from oversized pots, sous chefs shouted orders in rapid-fire Italian, and the smell of truffle oil and searing Wagyu beef hung heavy in the humid air. For Olivia Rose, it was just another Friday night in hell. She balanced a tray of 3 vintage Barolos and a plate of ossobuco, weaving through the crowded dining room with the grace of a dancer. Her feet throbbed in her cheap black heels. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be finishing her nursing degree. But tuition didn't pay for itself, and neither did the rent for the cramped apartment she shared with her little sister, Mia. Mia. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She glanced toward the service corridor near the back of the VIP section. She had told Mia to stay in the break room, to watch her cartoons on the cracked iPad and eat her grilled cheese. But Mia was 6, bored, and possessed a curiosity that was going to get one of them killed someday. The VIP section was roped off tonight. Velvet stanchions separated the regular wealthy patrons from the dangerous wealthy patrons. The air shifted when you walked past that rope. The laughter was quieter, the suits were sharper, and the eyes were colder. At the largest table in the corner, shrouded in shadows, sat the men everyone whispered about, but no one dared to name. The Russians, specifically the circle of Dmitry Volkov. Olivia knew who they were, not because she was part of that world, but because you couldn't work at Il Palazzo without knowing who tipped well and who looked at you like you were a piece of meat. Volkov was the latter. He was a bear of a man with scars that ran into his beard, drinking vodka neat despite the extensive wine list. But tonight, the energy was different. They weren't eating. They were waiting. Olivia deposited her tray at table 4 and quickly slipped into the shadows near the service station to check on Mia. Her blood ran cold. The break room door was slightly ajar, but empty. "Mia," she whispered, panic rising in her throat. She scanned the floor. Then she saw it. A small sneaker, scuffed at the toe, peeking out from under the long, heavy tablecloth of an empty service table, directly adjacent to Volkov's booth. Olivia moved to retrieve her, but a heavy hand landed on her shoulder. "Not now, Rose," the floor manager, Marco, hissed. "Look sharp. He is here." The restaurant went silent. It wasn't a request. It was an instinctive reaction to a predator entering the room. Through the double oak doors walked Vincenzo Vince Barone. If Volkov was a bear, Vince Barone was a panther. He was tall, dressed in a bespoke charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than Olivia would make in 10 years. His hair was dark, swept back, and his eyes were the color of burnt espresso, dark, intense, and missing any trace of warmth. He didn't walk. He glided. He was the Don of the city, the man who kept the peace by promising violence. He was accompanied by his underboss, a man named Dante, and 2 hulking bodyguards. Vince didn't look at the patrons gawking at him. He walked straight to the reserved table in the center of the VIP section, directly across from the Russians. This was a peace summit, or a declaration of war. Olivia felt sick. Mia was 5 feet away from where the 2 most dangerous factions in the city were about to collide. "Water," Marco snapped at her. "Table 1, now." Olivia grabbed the pitcher, her hands trembling. She walked toward Vince's table, her eyes darting to the tablecloth where Mia was hiding. She prayed Mia would stay silent. Please, just stay still. As she poured the sparkling water into Vince's crystal glass, she felt his eyes on her. It wasn't the lecherous stare of the Russians. It was a scan. He was assessing threats. He looked at her hands, her name tag, her eyes. For a split second, the world stopped. Olivia felt a jolt of electricity run through her spine. Then he dismissed her, turning his attention to Volkov across the aisle. "Dmitri," Vince said, his voice a smooth baritone that carried easily. "You're far from Brighton Beach." "Vincenzo," Volkov smiled, showing gold-capped teeth. He spoke in heavy, accented English. "The city is big. We thought we would try the Italian cuisine tonight." The tension was thick enough to choke on. Olivia backed away, retreating to the service station. But she didn't leave. She couldn't leave Mia. Under the table, little Mia was hugging her knees. She was bored, yes, but she was also listening. Her late grandmother, a stern woman from Kyiv who had helped raise her before passing last year, had insisted on speaking Russian to the girls. Olivia had picked up phrases, but Mia was a sponge. She was fluent. Mia heard the men at the table next to her, the big, loud ones, switch languages. They thought no one could understand them in an Italian restaurant. "Is it done?" one voice asked in Russian. "The waiter is paid," a deeper voice, Volkov, replied, low and guttural. "The risotto. The chef didn't see. We used the powder. Odorless. And the antidote?" "There is no antidote for this dose. Baron takes one bite, and his throat closes. He dies choking in front of everyone. New York is ours by midnight." Mia's eyes went wide. She knew the word Baron, the man in the nice suit. She peeked through the gap in the tablecloth. She saw a waiter, not Marco, but a new guy, sweating profusely, carrying a plate of saffron risotto toward the dark-haired man. The Russians were snickering softly. "Watch," Volkov said in Russian. "Watch the king fall." Olivia was watching from the station, terrified, waiting for a chance to grab Mia. She saw the waiter place the risotto in front of Vince. The steam rose up, smelling of butter and saffron. It looked perfect. Vince picked up his spoon. He was talking to Dante, distracted. He scooped up a portion of the creamy rice. The room was silent, watching the interaction between the two bosses. Mia didn't think. She didn't remember that she was 6, or that she wasn't supposed to be there. She just remembered what her grandmother said. "Evil prevails when good people do nothing." She scrambled out from under the table. Olivia gasped. "Mia, no!" But Mia was fast. She sprinted across the gap of the VIP section. Vince Baron was inches away from putting the spoon in his mouth. "No!" A high-pitched scream shattered the sophisticated atmosphere. Vince froze. The spoon hovered near his lips. Mia slammed her small hands onto the pristine white tablecloth of the Don's table, knocking a wine glass over. Red wine spilled like blood across the surface. "Don't eat it!" Mia screamed, her eyes filled with tears, pointing a shaking finger at the risotto. The entire restaurant gasped. Dante and the bodyguards were on their feet instantly, guns drawn, aiming at a 6-year-old girl in a faded pink t-shirt. "Mia!" Olivia shrieked. She abandoned all fear and threw herself between the guns and her sister, wrapping her body around the child. She looked up, eyes wide with terror, staring directly into the barrel of Dante's pistol. "Don't shoot! She's a child! Please, she's just a child!" Vince didn't move. He didn't flinch. He slowly lowered the spoon back to the plate. He looked at the spilled wine, then at the terrified woman shielding the little girl, and finally, his dark eyes locked onto Mia. He held up a hand, signaling his men to hold their fire. The silence was deafening. "Why?" Vince asked. His voice was quiet, deadly calm. He looked directly at Mia. "Why shouldn't I eat it, Piccola?" Mia was trembling in Olivia's arms, but she pointed a finger at Volkov's table. "He said—" Mia sniffled, looking at the Russian boss who was now standing up, his face a mask of fury. "He said the waiter put powder in it. He said you would choke. He said New York would be his by midnight." Vince's eyes flicked to Volkov. The Russian's face had gone pale, his hand reaching inside his jacket. "She is lying," Volkov roared in English. "A brat! A stupid child!" Vince looked back at the risotto. Then he looked at the waiter who had served it. The man was shaking so violently, he dropped his serving tray, the crash echoing like a gunshot. That was all the confirmation Vince needed. "Dante," Vince said, his voice dropping an octave, turning into pure ice. "Kill them all." Chaos erupted. Volkov flipped his table, using it as a shield as his men opened fire. Patrons screamed and dove to the floor. Glass shattered, wood splintered. "Get down!" Vince roared, not to his men, but to Olivia. He didn't dive for cover. Instead, in a move that defied logic, Vince Barone lunged forward, not toward the enemy, but toward Olivia and Mia. He grabbed them, his massive frame covering both of them as bullets shredded the booth where they had just been standing. He dragged them behind the heavy marble bar. "Stay down," he commanded, his hand briefly gripping Olivia's arm. His grip was iron, but his hand was warm. "Do not move until I say so." Olivia clutched Mia to her chest, sobbing dry, terrified breaths. I'm sorry," she whispered into Mia's hair. "He was going to die, Ellie," Mia whispered back, her voice tiny. Above them, the war raged. Gunfire, shouting, the sickening sound of violence. Then silence. Slow footsteps approached the bar. Olivia squeezed her eyes shut, preparing for the end. "It is over." She opened her eyes. Vince Barone was standing over them. His suit was dusted with plaster, his tie slightly askew, and there was a smear of blood on his cheek, not his own. He held a gun at his side, but he extended his other hand toward Olivia. "Get up," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. "You can't stay here. They will know who you are. They will know she understands their language." We can just go home," Olivia stammered, ignoring his hand and scrambling up, pulling Mia with her. "We won't say anything." Vince stepped closer, invading her personal space, smelling of gunpowder and expensive cologne. He towered over her, his presence overwhelming. "Volkov escaped," Vince said grimly. "He knows the girl speaks Russian. He knows she ruined his coup. If you go home tonight, you will both be dead before sunrise." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "My whore is out back," Vince stated. "You are coming with me." "I don't know you," Olivia said, her chin trembling but held high. "Why should I trust you?" Vince looked at her, really looked at her, for the second time that night. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that made her jump in front of a gun for her sister. "Because," Vince said, leaning in close, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in her chest, "I owe this little girl a life debt, and the Baron owns always pay their debts." He turned to the back exit. "Now walk, or die." Olivia looked at the carnage in the restaurant, then at Mia's terrified face. She realized she had no choice. She took Mia's hand and followed the devil into the night. The ride to the safe house was suffocating. It wasn't a standard car. It was a blacked-out, armored Cadillac Escalade that felt more like a hearse than a luxury vehicle. The leather smelled of new money and stale cigar smoke. Outside, the New York skyline blurred into streaks of gold and neon, a world that Olivia felt was slipping through her fingers with every passing mile. She sat in the back, clutching Mia so tightly her knuckles were white. Mia had finally crashed, the adrenaline fading into a deep, exhausted sleep, her small head resting heavily against Olivia's ribcage. Every shallow breath the child took was a reminder of how close they had come to the end. In the front passenger seat, Vince Barone was a silhouette of granite. He hadn't spoken a word since they left the alley behind Il Palazzo. He was on his phone, typing furiously, his screen the only source of light in the dark cabin. It illuminated the sharp angle of his jaw and the blood smear that was drying on his cheekbone. Olivia stared at the back of his head. She should be grateful. He had saved them. But she was a nurse. She knew that saving a life and preserving a life were two different things. He had pulled them from the fire, yes, but now he was carrying them into his own personal hell. "Where are we going?" Olivia asked. Her voice sounded brittle, foreign to her own ears. Vince didn't turn around. "Somewhere Volkov can't reach. I have a shift tomorrow," she said, the absurdity of the statement hanging in the air. "I have exams next week. My landlord, if I don't pay rent by Tuesday." Vince finally turned. In the dashboard glow, his eyes were pools of ink. "You don't have a shift. You don't have exams. And you don't have an apartment anymore." "Excuse me?" Anger flared, hot and sudden, cutting through her fear. "Dante is already there," Vince said, turning back to the road as the driver took a sharp turn toward the Upper East Side. "He is scrubbing your apartment. Anything with your name, your scent, your history, it's being erased. If Volkov finds where you live, he won't just kill you. He will wait for you. He will burn the building down with your neighbors inside just to flush you out." Olivia felt the air leave her lungs. You had no right to erase us." "I have every right," Vince replied, his voice low and devoid of emotion. "Because now, you belong to the problem, and I fix problems." The car slowed, turning into the underground garage of a glass needle that pierced the sky near Central Park, the Obsidian Tower. It was a fortress disguised as a residence. Security gates hissed open. Guards with earpieces nodded as the car passed. This wasn't just wealth. This was power. When the car stopped, the driver opened the door. Vince stepped out, buttoning his jacket. He looked at Olivia, who hadn't moved. "Bring the girl," he commanded. "She's sleeping," Olivia hissed. "I won't wake her." Vince stared at her for a long moment. He seemed perplexed by her defiance. Most people trembled when he gave an order. Olivia was trembling, yes, but her chin was tilted up. Without a word, Vince reached into the back seat. Olivia flinched, pulling back, but he ignored her. He slid his arms under Mia's sleeping form and lifted her effortlessly. The child stirred, murmuring something in her sleep, and settled her head against the expensive wool of his suit. "Follow me," he said. They took a private elevator that had no buttons, only a retinal scanner. The ride was smooth, silent, and painfully long. When the doors slid open, they stepped directly into the penthouse. It was breathtakingly cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, a sea of diamonds glittering below. But the interior was stark. Black marble floors, grey velvet furniture, abstract art that looked like bruised metal. It was a museum, not a home. It was a place where a man lived alone with his demons. "Guest wing is down the hall to the left," Vince said, his voice echoing in the vast space. He carried Mia into a bedroom that was larger than Olivia's entire apartment. He laid the child on the bed, pulling a grey duvet over her. He stepped back, watching the girl for a second too long. His expression softened, just a fraction, a crack in the armor, before freezing over again. He turned to leave, but Olivia blocked the doorway. "How long?" she asked. Vince looked down at her. Up close, The intensity of him was overwhelming. He smelled of rain and iron. Until Volkov is dead, or until a truce is brokered. And if neither happens, then you stay, he said simply, indefinitely. I am not your prisoner, Mr. Barone, Olivia said, her voice shaking. Vince took a step closer, forcing her to look up. He was so close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark irises. You are not a guest, Olivia, he said, using her name for the first time. It sounded intimate and dangerous on his tongue. Out there, you are a loose end. You are a target. In here, you are alive. You can hate me for the cage, but remember who locked the door to keep the wolves out. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face as if to touch her, then thought better of it. He dropped his hand. There are clothes in the closet. My sister leaves things here. They should fit. Lock this door from the inside. Do not open it for anyone but me. And if I need something, you won't, he said, turning his back on her. Welcome to your new life, Olivia. He walked away, his footsteps clicking rhythmically on the marble, fading into the shadows of the massive penthouse. Olivia watched him go, then stepped back into the room and turned the lock. The click sounded final. She slid down the door, buried her face in her knees, and finally, quietly, allowed herself to cry. Morning did not bring relief. It brought clarity. And clarity was terrifying. Olivia woke up with a stiff neck, curled on the edge of the oversized bed next to Mia. The room was flooded with grey, diffused light from the massive windows. The rain had not stopped. It battered the glass, isolating them from the world below. Mia was still asleep, her thumb near her mouth, looking impossibly small in the center of the king-sized mattress. Olivia smoothed her sister's hair, her heart aching. I have to fix this, she thought. I have to get us out. She needed coffee, and she needed answers. She found the clothes Vince had mentioned, a walk-in closet filled with designer labels, Gucci, Prada, Yves Saint Laurent. It felt wrong to touch them, like stealing from a ghost. She chose the simplest thing she could find, a pair of black leggings and an oversized cashmere sweater. It was softer than anything she had ever owned. She unlocked the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. The penthouse was silent. It was a mausoleum of wealth. She followed the smell of roasted coffee to the kitchen. It was a sleek, industrial space of stainless steel and black granite. Standing by the island, reading a newspaper, an actual paper one, was Vince. He had showered. His hair was damp, slightly curled at the ends, softening his sharp features. He wasn't wearing a jacket, just a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and a tattoo of a geometric lion on his left wrist. He didn't look up when she entered. There is espresso in the machine. Food is being delivered. Olivia stopped at the edge of the kitchen. I don't want food. I want to know what's happening. Vince folded the newspaper slowly. He placed it on the counter. The headline read, Gas leak explosion at Italian restaurant. Injures 6. A gas leak, Olivia scoffed, walking closer. Is that what we're calling it? The police are on my payroll. The press is on my payroll. The narrative is what I say it is, Vince said calmly. He picked up his cup, his eyes tracking her movement. But Volkov knows the truth. He knows he missed. And he knows why. He set the cup down. The atmosphere in the kitchen shifted instantly. The domestic quiet evaporated, replaced by the tension of an interrogation room. Sit, he commanded. He pointed to a high stool across the island. Olivia hesitated, then sat. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cower. Why does a 6-year-old American girl speak fluent Russian? Vince asked. His voice was low, but it demanded the truth. My grandmother, Olivia answered, keeping her voice steady. She was Ukrainian, from Kiev. She moved in with us when our mother died 3 years ago. She watched Mia while I worked and went to school. She refused to speak English in the house. She said, Olivia swallowed the lump in her throat. She said English was the language of commerce, but Russian was the language of survival in her neighborhood. Vince studied her face, looking for a lie. Convenient. It's the truth, Olivia snapped. Mia is a mimic. She picks up everything. She didn't know what she was hearing last night, not really. She just recognized the tone. She recognized the threat, Vince corrected. She saved my life, Olivia. Do not downplay that. But that skill is what puts a target on her back. So what now? Olivia asked, gripping the edge of the marble counter. We just live here. Forever? I'm studying to be a nurse practitioner. I have a life. You had a life, Vince said brutally. Now you have a situation. He walked around the island, moving into her personal space. He leaned against the counter next to her, crossing his arms. He was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Volkov is not a street thug, Vince explained, his voice dropping to a murmur. He is ex-KGB. He is a strategist. He failed to kill me, which makes him look weak. To regain his standing, he needs to wipe out the witness. He needs to punish the person who humiliated him. Mia, Olivia whispered. And you, Vince added. He will assume you are my mistress, or my spy. Olivia flushed. I'm a waitress. Not anymore, Vince said. He turned his head, locking eyes with her. You are smart, Olivia. I saw you last night. You didn't scream. You didn't faint. You put your body between a gun and your sister. Most of my men wouldn't do that. I did what I had to do. Exactly, Vince murmured. You possess a rare quality, loyalty, conviction. The air between them grew thick. It wasn't romantic. It was too dangerous for that. But it was electric, a recognition of shared strength. Suddenly, the elevator chimed. Olivia jumped, her eyes darting to the doors. Vince's demeanor changed instantly. He was no longer the brooding host. He was the Don. His hand went to the small of his back, where Olivia realized he was concealing a gun beneath his shirt. Stay behind me, he ordered. The elevator doors opened. It was Dante, the underboss. He looked tired, his suit rumpled, his face grim. He was carrying a small, flat cardboard box. Vince, Dante said, nodding at his boss. He glanced at Olivia with open suspicion, then looked back at Vince. We have a problem. What is it? Vince asked. This was left at the service entrance of the building. Security didn't catch the courier. He was wearing a delivery uniform. Dante placed the box on the kitchen island. Olivia felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. What is it? Vince held up a hand to silence her. He pulled a switchblade from his pocket and sliced the tape. He flipped the lid open. Olivia gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Inside the box was a burnt, blackened doll. It was Mia's doll, the one she had left in the break room at the restaurant. Its plastic face was melted, disfigured. Pinned to the doll's chest with a jagged piece of glass was a note. It was written in crude, jagged English. The little bird sings. We will cut her tongue. Olivia felt the room spin. She gripped the counter to keep from falling. He found it. He knows. Vince stared at the doll. His face was unreadable, a mask of cold fury. His jaw clenched so hard, a muscle feathered in his cheek. He reached into the box and pulled out the note. He crumpled it in his fist. Dante, Vince said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. Boss? Call the captains. All of them, Vince commanded, his eyes still fixed on the melted doll. Volkov just made a mistake. He threatened a child in my house. Vince turned to Olivia. The darkness in his eyes was absolute. Take Mia to the media room. It has no windows. Do not come out until I come for you. "What are you going to do?" Olivia whispered, trembling. Vince looked at her, and for a moment the mask slipped. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to jump. "I'm going to remind them why they call me Il Macellaio," he said softly. "The butcher." "Go." Olivia ran. Time in the penthouse didn't move in hours. It moved in shifting shadows. 2 days had passed since the restaurant. 2 days of turbulence. The media room was a windowless cocoon where Olivia had built a fortress of pillows for Mia. They watched cartoons with the volume turned low, the colourful animations a jarring contrast to the grey dread settling in Olivia's stomach. Vince had not returned. The only other living soul in the apartment was Dante. The underboss was a statue of a man, standing guard by the elevator or pacing the balcony, chain-smoking cigarettes that he extinguished in a silver bowl. He didn't speak to Olivia, only grunting when she asked for water or fresh towels. He treated her not like a guest, but like a package he was paid to watch. By the afternoon of the second day, Maya was restless. She had coloured every page in the books Dante had awkwardly provided. She was currently napping, the exhaustion of trauma finally catching up to her. Olivia couldn't sleep. The silence was too loud. It amplified her thoughts. Where is he? Is he dead? Are we next? She wandered out of the media room, her bare feet silent on the cold marble. Dante was on the balcony, his back to her, speaking in hushed, angry Italian into his phone. He didn't see her slip down the hallway toward the east wing, the only part of the penthouse she hadn't seen. The hallway was lined with black and white photographs, not of people, but of architecture, bridges, cathedrals, ruins, structures that had survived the test of time. It felt lonely. At the end of the hall was a set of double mahogany doors. Unlike the other rooms, these were shut tight. Olivia reached for the handle, expecting it to be locked. To her surprise, the latch clicked and the heavy door swung open on well-oiled hinges. The room smelled of old paper, leather, and whiskey. It was a library, 2 stories high, with a spiral staircase leading to a mezzanine. But it wasn't the books that caught her attention. It was the desk. It was a massive slab of reclaimed wood, cluttered with maps, blueprints of the city, and dossiers. Olivia walked toward it, her heart hammering against her ribs. She knew she shouldn't look. She knew curiosity killed the cat, or in this case the waitress. But she needed to know who held her life in his hands. She scanned the papers. There were photos of Volkov, photos of shipping containers, lists of judges and their bribe amounts. It was a ledger of corruption. Then she saw a small framed photograph tucked behind a stack of books, as if hidden away from casual view. Olivia picked it up, her breath hitched in her throat. The photo was old, maybe 7 years. It showed a younger Vince, his face less angular, his eyes bright with a happiness that seemed impossible for the man she knew. He was standing on a pier in Italy, his arm around a beautiful woman with dark, cascading curls. But it was the child in the woman's arms that made Olivia's knees weak. The little girl was about 3 years old. She had the same dark curls as her mother, but her face, the shape of her eyes, the button nose, the way she smiled. She looked exactly like Mia. "Put it down." The voice came from the shadows of the doorway. It wasn't a shout, it was a growl. Olivia spun around, nearly dropping the frame. Vince was standing there. She hadn't heard the elevator. She hadn't heard footsteps. He was just there, a phantom materializing from the gloom. He looked terrible. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was stained with sweat and grime, and there was a bandage wrapped hastily around his left hand. His face was grey with exhaustion, his eyes burning with a terrifying mix of rage and grief. The door was open," Olivia stammered, placing the photo back on the desk with trembling hands. "I was just..." You were prying, Vince said, walking into the room. He moved with a slight limp. He walked past her, not looking at the photo, and went straight to a crystal decanter on a side table. He poured a glass of amber liquid and downed it in one swallow. He poured another. Did you find what you were looking for? He asked, his back to her. Did you find the monster's lair? I found a family, Olivia whispered. Vince stiffened. The glass in his hand cracked. He set it down slowly. They are not a family, he said, his voice hollow. They are ghosts, and you have no right to haunt them. She looks like Mia, Olivia said, the realization dawning on her. That's why. That's why you saved us. Not because of a debt, but because when you looked at my sister, you saw her. Vince turned slowly. The pain in his eyes was so raw, so naked, that Olivia wanted to look away, but she couldn't. Her name was Sophia, Vince said, the words dragged out of him. And my daughter was Isabella. They died because I was arrogant, because I thought I was untouchable. He took a step toward her. Volkov didn't just try to kill me at the restaurant, Olivia. He is the one who planted the car bomb 6 years ago. He took them from me, and when I saw your sister, when I saw her standing up to him... His voice broke. He closed his eyes, taking a shuddering breath. Get out, he whispered. Go back to the room, before I forget that I am trying to save you. Olivia hesitated. She saw the blood seeping through his shirt now, a dark stain spreading on his side. You're bleeding, she said softly. It's nothing. It's not nothing, Olivia said, her nurse's instinct overriding her fear. She walked toward him, ignoring the danger radiating off him. Sit down, Vince. Olivia, sit down. To her shock, the Wolf of New York obeyed. He sank into the leather armchair, his head falling back, his resistance crumbling under the weight of his physical and emotional wounds. The library was dim, lit only by a single brass desk lamp. The rain hammered against the glass, a relentless rhythm accompanying the grim task at hand. Olivia had retrieved the first aid kit from the bathroom, a kit that was disturbingly well stocked with surgical-grade sutures, antiseptic, and morphine. It told her that this was a household that expected violence. Vince sat in the chair, his shirt unbuttoned and pulled aside. The wound was a jagged slice across his ribs. It wasn't deep enough to hit an organ, but it was ugly. A knife wound. This needs stitches, Olivia murmured, snapping on a pair of latex gloves. Her hands were steady now. This was familiar territory. Flesh and blood she could handle. It was the man attached to them that terrified her. Do it, Vince gritted out, staring at the ceiling. He refused the morphine. He said he needed to stay sharp. Olivia cleaned the wound with iodine. Vince hissed, his muscles contracting, hard as stone beneath her fingers. Who did this? She asked quietly, threading the needle. One of Volkov's lieutenants. I found him in a warehouse in Queens. Did you kill him? He gave me the information I needed, Vince said evasively. Hold the skin tight. Olivia pierced the skin with the needle. Vince didn't flinch, but his jaw clenched so hard she thought his teeth might shatter. What information? She asked, tying the first knot. She focused on the rhythm. Pierce. Pull. Knot. Cut. Volkov is desperate, Vince said, his voice strained. He lost face. The other families are circling him like sharks. He needs a grand gesture to prove he is still strong. He isn't planning to leave the country. He is planning a siege. A siege on who? Vince looked down at her. Her face was inches from his bare chest as she worked. On me. He knows he can't get to me on the street, so he is coming for the tower. Olivia froze, the needle hovering over his skin. Here. But the security is the best money can buy, Vince said. But every wall has a crack. I just haven't found it yet. He reached out, his hand covering hers, stopping her movement. His hand was large, rough, and hot. "Olivia," he said. The use of her name sent a shiver down her spine. "I need you to listen to me. If they come, if the alarms go off, you cannot wait for me. There is a panic room behind the wine cellar in the kitchen. The code is 0824. That was Isabella's birthday. You take Mia, you go inside, and you do not open that door until you hear my voice. Not Dante's, not anyone else's. Mine." Olivia looked up into his eyes. They were dark, endless, and filled with a terrified intensity. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," Vince said, his thumb brushing the pulse point on her wrist. "I have a bad feeling. The silence out there. It's too quiet. Volkov is a screamer. If he is quiet, it means he is already moving." Olivia finished the stitch, tying it off with trembling fingers. She taped the gauze over the wound. "Done," she whispered. She pulled away, but Vince didn't let go of her hand. For a moment, the air in the room changed. The barrier between captor and captive, between boss and civilian, thinned. He pulled her slightly closer. Olivia felt an insane, magnetic pull toward him. He was dangerous. He was a killer. But in this light, he was just a man who had lost everything and was trying to keep her from suffering the same fate. "You have good hands," he murmured, his eyes dropping to her lips. Olivia's breath hitched. "Vince." The moment was shattered by the shrill ring of his phone. Vince released her instantly, the mask slamming back into place. He grabbed the phone from the desk. "Speak!" he barked. He listened for a second, his face draining of color. "Cut the lines!" he roared. "Lock down the elevators! Now!" He hung up and looked at Olivia. The vulnerability was gone. He was the butcher again. "Get Mia," he commanded, pulling a fresh gun from the desk drawer and racking the slide. What is it?" Olivia backed away. "Dante just found the breach," Vince said, moving toward the door. "It wasn't a hack. It wasn't a break-in." He looked at her, his eyes wild. "The head of my security detail just let them in the service entrance. We are compromised." Suddenly, the lights in the penthouse died. The hum of the refrigerator, the air conditioning, the ambient city noise, everything cut out. Absolute, suffocating darkness swallowed the room. Then the red emergency lights flickered on, bathing the apartment in the color of blood. The penthouse, once a fortress of luxury, transformed instantly into a hunting ground. The red emergency lighting cast long, distorted shadows that danced across the marble floors. "Stay low," Vince whispered, grabbing Olivia's arm. "Do not run. Walk fast. Silence is your only friend right now." They moved into the hallway. The silence was heavy, oppressive. It was the calm before the storm. "Mia," Olivia breathed, pulling toward the guest wing. "Go," Vince pushed her. "I will secure the hall." Olivia burst into the bedroom. Mia was sitting up in bed, clutching the duvet, her eyes wide and terrified in the red light. "Ellie," she whimpered, "why are the lights red?" "It's a game, baby," Olivia lied, her voice shaking as she scooped Mia into her arms. "We have to play hide and seek, really quiet hide and seek. Okay?" Mia nodded, burying her face in Olivia's neck. She was heavy, but adrenaline gave Olivia the strength of 10 women. She ran back into the hallway. Vince was waiting, his gun raised, pointed at the elevator doors at the far end of the living room. Ding! The sound was deafening in the silence. The private elevator, which should have been locked down, was rising. They overrode the system manually, Vince cursed under his breath. He looked at Olivia. "Kitchen, now! The wine cellar. Go!" "Come with us," Olivia cried. "If I go with you, they will find the room. I have to draw them away." Vince looked at her, and for a split second, a tragic smile touched his lips. Run, Olivia. Olivia turned and ran toward the kitchen. Behind her, the elevator doors slid open. "Baron!" a voice boomed, Russian, thick and triumphant. Then the gunfire started. It wasn't the cinematic bang-bang of movies. It was a deafening, chest-rattling roar. Automatic weapons fire shredded the silence. Olivia heard the sound of expensive glass shattering, of wood splintering, of bullets tearing through the art and furniture. She threw herself into the kitchen, sliding on the marble floor. She scrambled toward the massive wine cellar at the back. "Open! Open! Open!" she sobbed, punching the code into the keypad hidden behind a bottle of vintage Chianti. 0824. A green light flashed. The heavy hidden door clicked and swung inward. Olivia threw Mia inside. It was a small concrete room lined with supplies and monitors. "Stay here, Mia. Don't move." Olivia turned to close the door, but she stopped. Through the gap in the kitchen doorway, she could see the living room. The flashes of muzzle fire illuminated the chaos. Vince was behind the overturned sofa, firing back, but there were too many of them. 5, 6 men in tactical gear were fanning out, flanking him. She saw Dante emerge from the stairwell, firing a shotgun, taking one Russian down. But then a spray of bullets caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down. Vince was alone. He was pinned down. He was reloading, but a man was creeping up on his left, a combat knife glinting in the red light. Olivia looked at the safe panic room. She looked at Mia, safe inside. Then she looked at the man who had saved them, the man who had lost his wife and child, because he did nothing. Evil prevails when good people do nothing. Olivia didn't close the door. Instead, she grabbed a heavy cast-iron skillet from the hanging rack above the island. It was heavy, brutal, and solid. She wasn't a soldier. She was a sister. And she was done running. "Stay inside, Mia!" she screamed, slamming the panic room door shut from the outside. Olivia rose, armed with a frying pan and a heart full of terror, sprinted into the war zone. The Russian flanker didn't hear her over the gunfire. He was focused on Vince. He raised his knife, preparing to lunge over the couch while Vince was reloading. Olivia didn't hesitate. She swung the skillet with every ounce of strength she possessed. Clang! The iron connected with the back of the Russian's tactical helmet. It didn't crack the helmet, but the force of the blow knocked his brain against his skull. He crumbled instantly, unconscious before he hit the floor. Vince spun around, gun raised, eyes wide with shock, as he saw Olivia standing over the fallen hitman. "Are you insane?" Vince roared, grabbing her and pulling her down behind the sofa just as bullets chewed up the spot where she had been standing. "You needed backup!" Olivia yelled back, her ears ringing. "You brought a frying pan to a gunfight. It worked, didn't it? Vince looked at her. He was covered in drywall dust, bleeding from his side and surrounded by enemies. And he laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "You are a lunatic," he said, breathless. "I think I'm falling in love with you." "Tell me later," Olivia screamed as a vase exploded above their heads. "How do we get out?" "We don't go out," Vince said, checking his magazine. "We go up." "Up? The roof. My chopper is there. But we have to get to the stairs." "What about Mia?" "We get her on the way. But first," Vince popped up, firing 2 precise shots. 2 bodies dropped. "We have to clear the path." Vince looked at her, his eyes blazing. He pulled a spare pistol from his ankle holster and shoved it into her hand. It was heavy, cold, and terrifying. "Safety is off," he said. "Point and squeeze. Don't think about it. Just protect the family." Olivia gripped the gun. Her hands were shaking, but her resolve was iron. "Protect the family," she repeated. Vince nodded. "On 3. 1, 2, 3." They moved together, a crime lord and a waitress, rising from the ashes of the living room to fight for their lives. The ascent to the roof was a blur of adrenaline and burning lungs. Vince carried Mia, who buried her face in his shoulder, too terrified to cry. Olivia followed close behind, the heavy pistol gripping her hand like a lifeline. They burst through the heavy steel fire door and onto the helipad. The storm had turned into a gale. Rain lashed sideways, stinging their faces. The wind howled, whipping Olivia's hair across her eyes. In the center of the pad, the black helicopter's rotors were already spinning, slicing through the deluge. The pilot, a man Vince trusted with his life, was waving them forward frantically. "Gunner!" Vince roared over the noise of the engine, pushing Olivia toward the open bay door. "Get her inside!" Olivia scrambled into the leather seat, pulling Mia in after her. She buckled the child in with trembling hands. "It's okay. We're leaving." She looked back. Vince wasn't getting in. He was standing on the edge of the helipad, his back to the chopper, his gun raised. "Vince!" she screamed, her voice torn away by the wind. From the shadows of the roof access door, a figure emerged. It wasn't the tactical team. It was Dmitry Volkov. The Russian boss looked like a demon. He was soaked, his expensive suit clinging to his massive frame. He held a submachine gun in one hand, but he wasn't firing. He was smiling. "Run, little rabbit," Volkov shouted in English, his voice booming over the storm. "Fly away, but you cannot land. I have men at every airport, every helipad." Vince took a step forward, shielding the helicopter with his body. "This ends here, Dmitry." "Does it?" Volkov laughed. He raised a remote detonator in his left hand. "The foundation of this building is rigged. I don't need to shoot you, Vincenzo. I just need to press this button, and we all become dust." Olivia froze. The pilot looked back at her, eyes wide with panic. The chopper engine whined, ready to lift, but they were tethered by the threat. "You'll die too," Vince shouted, steadying his aim. "I am a dead man anyway," Volkov spat. "You ruined my reputation. If I cannot have the city, no one will." He moved his thumb to the button. Vince hesitated. If he shot Volkov, the man's hand might pause and trigger the detonator. If he didn't shoot, Volkov would blow them up anyway. It was a stalemate, a checkmate. Suddenly, a small, high voice cut through the noise. It wasn't a scream. It was a song. "Bayou, bayou, hushaby." Olivia looked down. Mia was singing. It was a Russian lullaby, the one her grandmother used to sing. Volkov flinched. The sound of his mother tongue, sung by a child in the middle of a storm, pierced his madness for a split second. His eyes flickered to the helicopter window where Mia was watching him. That split second was all Vince Barone needed. He didn't shoot Volkov in the head. He shot the hand holding the detonator. Bang! The bullet shattered Volkov's wrist. The detonator flew from his grasp, skittering across the wet concrete towards the edge of the roof. Volkov howled in pain, clutching his mangled hand. Vince didn't stop. He sprinted forward, tackling the Russian. The two titans slammed onto the wet pavement, rolling toward the precipice. The submachine gun fired blindly into the sky. "Vince!" Olivia screamed. She unbuckled her belt, ready to jump out. "Take off!" Vince roared at the pilot, struggling to keep Volkov pinned. "Go!" "No!" Olivia grabbed the pilot's shoulder. "Wait!" On the edge of the roof, 70 stories above the street, Vince had his hands around Volkov's throat. Volkov was gouging at Vince's wounded side, his thumbs pressing into the fresh stitches. Vince grunted in agony, but didn't let go. "You... loose. End," Vince gritted out. With a final primal surge of strength, Vince shifted his weight. He didn't just push Volkov. He slammed his forehead into the Russian's nose, shattering it. As Volkov reeled back, blinded by pain and blood, Vince kicked him square in the chest. Volkov stumbled back. His heel caught the edge of the drainage gutter. He flailed, grabbing at the air, his eyes locking onto Vince's one last time. Then gravity took him. There was no scream, just the void. Vince collapsed to his knees, gasping for air, rain washing the blood from his face. He looked at the empty space where his enemy had been. It was over. The debt was paid. The helicopter hovered a few feet off the ground. Olivia was hanging out of the open door, her hand outstretched. "Vince, take my hand." He looked up at her. He looked at the life he could have, the life he had been afraid to want since Sophia died. He stood up, swaying slightly. He ran and leaped onto the skid of the chopper. Olivia grabbed his wrist, pulling with everything she had. He hauled himself inside, collapsing onto the floor of the cabin as the pilot banked hard, swinging them away from the obsidian tower and into the safety of the night sky. Vince lay on the floor, wet, bleeding, and exhausted. He looked up. Olivia was there. Mia was there. Olivia fell to her knees beside him, her hands checking his wounds, her tears mixing with the rain on his face. "You idiot," she sobbed, kissing his forehead. "You alive, beautiful idiot." Vince reached up, his hand trembling, and cupped her cheek. He looked at Mia, who was watching him with wide, solemn eyes. "We're safe?" Mia asked. Vince smiled. It was a real smile this time. "Yes, Piccola. We're safe." He pulled Olivia down, kissing her properly, a kiss that tasted of rain, danger, and a future that was finally, truly theirs. Below them, the city lights twinkled like diamonds. But Vince Barone wasn't looking at his kingdom anymore. He was looking at his queen. And that is the story of how a spilled risotto and a 6-year-old girl brought down the Russian mob and melted the heart of the city's most ruthless don. Vince Barone thought he was saving them, but in the end, Olivia and Mia saved him. They proved that even in a world of darkness, loyalty and love are the deadliest weapons of all. They didn't just survive the war. They became a family forged in fire. And as for the Russian, well, let's just say it's a long way down from the top. If your heart was racing during that rooftop finale, do me a favor and smash that like button right now. It helps more people find these stories. What would you have done in Olivia's shoes? Would you have run, or would you have grabbed the frying pan? Let me know in the comments below. I have another twisted Mafia story coming next week, involving a stolen diamond and a wedding that goes horribly wrong. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.